I'm not gonna lie, definitely not easy.
Hey, whoa.
Just gotta get through the day.
How do you stop it?
Being used to doing something with a cigarette makes it hard doing it without one. If I can relearn to get through my workday without cigarettes, I can relearn anything without cigarettes.
Relearn life without cigarettes. Free at becomeanex.org. A new way to think about quitting.
So, do you have any questions?
What is your soup of the day?
We have a mulligatawny soup.
Oh, do you have any specials?
We have a steak special today.
Oh, how's that cooked?
That's pan-seared and then...
Does it come with a side dish? Is it grilled? Can I have it steamed? So, what do you recommend? What kind of pie do you have? You're an actor. Aren't you from Ohio?
Any questions?
Ask questions. For the 10 questions everyone should know, go to ahrq.gov.
Welcome back to Profiles. If you're looking for a thrilling, impossible to put down, page-turning mystery to read this summer, then you'll definitely want to get your hands on Blackberry Days of Summer, the debut novel by Atlanta's own master storyteller, Miss Ruth P. Watson. The story is set in rural Jefferson County, Virginia after World War I and is packed with history, deception, and suspense. It's sure to keep you guessing until the very end, and here to tell us more is author Ruth P. Watson. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us at Profiles.
Thank you for having me.
This is sure to be a best-selling novel.
Yes, I hope so.
Tell us, how did Blackberry Days of Summer come about?
Well, Blackberry Days of Summer came about from stories I had been told by some of the elders in the family. I come from a little rural town in Virginia, and, you know, I'm not supposed to be listening to the stories, but if I had a chance, and my grandmother and others were talking about things going on in the South or in the country, I would listen. But what I would do, I would have my own ending to that story. So I had an imagination way back when. And I said one day, I'd always said this, even in college, that one day I was going to write a book. And then, of course, there were other books similar to what Blackberry Days is about, Days of Summer is about. And I said, wait a minute, I'm going to write my story, and I'm going to create the characters I want to create. And so there was a period of time around the post-World War I where there's not that much information out there about. I guess there's historical information, but we don't hear stories written about it. We hear about the Harlem Renaissance, the 20s. We hear about the 30s, the Great Depression, and so forth. But we don't ever hear about what's happening and how African Americans were experiencing America after World War I, which is the Great War, as they call it. So that's how Blackberry Days of Summer was spawned.
Well, it certainly is a very intriguing book, as I said at the offset. And the characters have some interesting dynamics. Can you tell us just a little bit about the story without giving too much away?
Oh, sure I can. The story starts out when the father of a stable family has died, and in walks Herman Cam. Now Herman Cam is a little suspect from the beginning. He has something. It's something mysterious about him. His eyes are beady. He's not the most handsome man, but he's very debonair in the way that he dressed. He's street. You could tell he's a bit street smart. And in the country, of course, everybody wears bib overalls and dresses, and he comes in with spit shine shoes and a suit. So he has a different air with him. But immediately, Carrie, one of the characters in the story, sees him, and it's something about him she does not like. But he has a way with women, and I guess in today's society he would be called a womanizer. Mm-hmm. And he ends up having different types of relationships with 3 different women. And their lives converge when he is found murdered. Now, mind you, he has pissed off a lot of people. So there are a lot of people out there that would like to see him dead. And all of the women in the story have a connection to him. It's a connection that they would love to forget, but they can't. And an investigation is done. And of course, in that time period, who cares about African Americans, or at the time, coloreds? So the investigation is handled and completely done in probably no time, because nobody cares about a colored man being murdered by another colored person, you know, we think. And the investigation is just totally closed, but there are all suspects, and all of the women become suspects also in the story, because of course they have relations with him, at some type of relationship with him, but it's also because he has pissed off so many people, the three of them and many other people in the community. And you know, in a small southern town, everybody talks. And everybody wants to know, and everybody gets involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in. So he has made his mark, and the mystery goes. You want to know, you know, in the story, I hope that people will find that there are different ways to handle crisis in your life. I wanted to show how African Americans and coloreds lived in that time period. What things, some of the same things that we deal with today, we also dealt with back in the early 1900s. And you can imagine, the soldiers are coming home. It's 1919 when the Great War ended, and they're coming home. There's no jobs, so there's an economic factor going on. Also, there is segregation and treatment, and everybody cross racial lines, because in the story you will see there's always involvement with whites in rural America, and the involvement is not necessarily always a combative relationship. It becomes a dependent relationship. So I wanted to combine all of that into a story that was entertaining and had some spice, because no book to me is any good without a little spice.
Without a little spice in it.
So I had to add some spice in there, you know, so that people would understand that things happen, and these are real people with real circumstances, and hopefully good outcomes. But who knows, because there is a murder. There is a murder, and people want to know who did it. Yes. And I can guarantee you, when our readers read this book, they will certainly feel the spice, they will feel the intensity, and by book's end, they will know who murdered Herman Camm. Well, they would think they know who murdered Herman Camm, and because I've gotten many phone calls saying, well, you know, did this person murder him? Who murdered him? You know, why did you do that to us? Well, that's the suspense, and trying to write a decent story where you have to think about who you think might have murdered Herman Camm. And an elderly lady read the book, and she told me, she said, you know something, now I read from the Bible to Zane. I said, well, Zane don't always write, you know, everything that she does and produces is not erotica. This is a literary historical fiction with a lot of spice in it. So a different kind of spice. A different kind. It's a different kind of spice, and sometimes it's some of the same spice. Some of the same spice, certainly. Yes. Certainly. Well, what has the reception been? How have the reviews? What have they been saying about? And your readers, what have they been saying about? Well, most of the reviews that I've heard so far have been very, very good. I mean, people are sending me emails. One lady sent me an email. She said, when I got to chapter 28, I just couldn't stop crying because it reminded me of myself. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. And then somebody else sent me an email, said, you know, I really, really love this book. I gotta see a sequel. You gotta write something else to this, because we wanna know what happened to Carrie. We wanna know what happened to these characters after the story has ended. So I've been getting really, really great reviews, and we've been showcased in a few online magazines, newspapers, and Black Expressions are going to pick us up in September. So we're moving along. The book is getting quite a bit of positive responses so far.
Well, the best PR is word of mouth, and I'm sure that as people read this book, they will realize the quality, the literary quality that it is, and they'll want to know, will there be a sequel?
Well, I'm working on something right now. I am working on a sequel.
It's in the works.
It's in the works, and I hope that it will be as good as I think it's going to be better than Blackberry Days of Summer, because we hope that it will be as good or better than Blackberry Days of Summer. I better say it like that. You know, I'll leave that up to the viewers and the readers to give me their feedback on it. But there is a book in the making, and I'm working on it right now.
Now, Ruth, there are a variety of characters in the book, and each of them have their own particular stories to tell. How challenging was it to weave each of these stories into this novel to make it seamless and intoxicating and spicy and intriguing at the same time?
It was very challenging. What I did was I tried to get into character. I'm not an actress by any means, but I had to get into character. I was Carrie for a chapter, and then I became Pearl. And sometimes I say, well, maybe Pearl is my Sasha Fierce person. That's what Beyonce says. You know, she has another character that she becomes if she wants to become. And so I got into both characters when I was writing for Carrie, but I had to figure out a way to weave it together. And I think in the end, as you can see, because of the community, they have no connection other than church. So the only way to weave them together, and probably the center of the focus, had to be Herman Camm. So whatever he did, I had to make sure that those two stories meshed so that we can come up with an ending. And it took some time to put together, because most people don't write from 2 points of views in first person. They usually write one point of view, and that point of view remains stable throughout the novel. In this case, I did 2 points of views and in 2 different characters, so I had to get into 2 different characters. It was fun to do, but it was a little challenging sometimes, but I knew that Carrie had a different role than Pearl did, and her thrust for life was certainly more about education and accomplishment. Pearl's thrust was about being in the spotlight, showcasing her talent. So each of them had goals, but I had to get into 2 different characters to make it happen. It wasn't that challenging, but I think it takes a lot of concentration and work, and at that time I had a lot of time on my hands, and I could work with it.
And it's a dance that you've created among the characters that, again, like I said, is a seamless tapestry, if you will, of the story. And you touched on quite a few themes that are typically present in the African American community: education, mental health, and racial equality or inequality, as it were, during this time period. Why those 3 particular themes?
Well, I think those themes are something that has remained consistent throughout time. Education. We've always been told that education was our freedom, and it has been our freedom. My parents, you go to school, you become educated, and you move forward in life, because we are always trying to fit into, and we were always trying to fit into America. And the one way in which colored people, or African Americans today, and colored in those times, felt that we could fit was to become more educated, so that we could communicate better, could fit into a white world, so to speak. And that's what we did. We were not allowed to read for such long periods of time. And when we got that opportunity to do it, we took it very seriously, because we wanted to make a statement to say, hey, we're as smart as anybody. We can do as much as anybody can do, and we're gonna let you know that we can, because we're gonna go to school, we're gonna become educated, we're gonna get a talent or a skill or whatever we need, so that you can take notice that we deserve to be here as well. So I think that was the thrust when it came to education. But when it came to mental illness is across the board in any family, not just African American, everybody's family. I mean, any race, there's some type of mental illness. And during those times in 1919, 1920, most people would keep that stuff to themselves. Things would be happening, but because everybody was so tight-lipped, more inhibited to speak about situations that was going on, I thought it was really a good time now to write about how would somebody with who was an alcoholic, how would an alcoholic perform? How would an alcoholic treat someone who has no control? How would someone who's already been abused understand abuse, the continuation of abuse? So I sort of wanted to touch on that and let people know that there are circumstances as to why people act the way they did, or how the characters in the book performed, or how they handle certain situations. So I think that was the thrust. And the last one you said was,
racial equality or inequality, and that was quite prevalent. And even in today's society, it's quite prevalent. So it appears that the historical context and the themes that you work with in this book add richness. They add that vibrancy to the novel, with that touch of spice that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And Ruth, we are certain that this book will be a best-selling novel. And I do hope, and hold me to my word, come back and tell us about the sequel.
Okay, I will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for watching. As always, if you or someone you know has taken the professional path less traveled, or you'd like to be considered for Artist Spotlight, please send your request to profiles.cautv@gmail.com. I'll see you next time on Profiles.